Okay, I had to start over because my microphone wasn't working. Uh, I'm back again with the same title. Yeah, let's see here. Yeah, I'm thinking about things, but I gotta reshare these to Facebook. Should have did this before. Hopefully it all goes smoothly. And Twitter X. Okay, let's see. Can anybody verify that they can hear me? I'd appreciate that kind of a sound check. I'll put that in here. Oh, great. Thank you, Vivian. Appreciate that. And so, I mean, it's pretty a wild statement to make to me, to ask the question, put it as a question because, how do I know? I mean, I think I do. That's my problem for some people, I guess. But I think what's being reported, for the most part, as far as I can tell, seems to be consistent with things that I can imagine Tiendo and crew doing. And coming to terms with exactly who they are. Because they are from an advanced civilization. And their minds are above us, beyond us. And but and that's a good thing. Why that's thought of as a bad thing is what's so terrible about people that are switching that around too, along with everything, that everything's upside down, inside out, which T was talking about in 1973, or three, when she wrote the first book that they wrote, which was I Can't Believe That, But You Must, where she talked about the inside outing. I don't know if that was part of her theosophical, you know, introduction to the next level's relationship with the spirit world and the the discarnate world and the other. I saw a thing about CERN that said they were finding some kind of different dimension, and there were some kind of beings that they found in those vicinities, and I don't really doubt that that's possible. That they could see different dimensions to light, related to the spirit world, or what might be the composition of dreams, frequency, structures, and and different things that are in this atmosphere that we have hardly any idea about in any kind of scientific frame of evaluation by the human science community that comes from a very limited perspective, where the spiritual community then has if they haven't recognized that it's talking about the same thing but in different ways, but those that know that there are minds that are above us and have had some experience even with things and events, and that can all be explained away as well as coincidence or lots of things. But those that have had experiences that they still think were experiences with the paranormal world, the spirit world, the invisible the dimension that's invisible to us and defies our logic to define, except for the way that T and O did it, as like a plasma-like material world. It's got its physicality, but it's like a gas form or something. It's a different state of matter, and that matter can actually block. They can put out the signal that we can't see it, same way that a dog can see things that a human eye can't see, and other creatures like birds can see things that I think human eyes can't see, and they can't see things that human eyes can see, I think is also the case. It's these are all things that we can understand are part of reality now and nowadays because of the advancements of technology. So that can take it out of the spiritual realm of the imagination and put it into a more concrete stability grounded in science, because it is science. It's whether you can interpret the band, the wavelength, the colorations of the spectrographic view is an immense ability to have to be able to see more of what's happening in these distant bodies. And they're saying that there's some new elements that they're describing as chrome and a polished chrome-like sphere that they're trying to. And you can say, well, I know the voices that are saying that, well, this is just the government coming up with this to try to have us on another crusade, and that's also true. But the government was doing it before Atlas. And Atlas has actually, I believe, shocked them into reality that Atlas is a fleet and a bunch of things. A square, a cube, they called it at one point, by the things that it was putting out and the things that were responding to that, and their interchange with certain kind of communication that, even entailed words like the harvest has begun, to the uh, um, to the people that have been watching through the telescopes, the dish array in New Mexico, the WOW signal, the SETI program. I'm sorry, I'm being slow to get to it, but they apparently received the message that they haven't received the message since the WOW signals, that they've still been trying to interpret and understand, but they really aren't getting anywhere with, I don't think, that I've last heard. But so they got this other signal. So these things aren't without history. And that's what makes them comprehensible as being real. It's not just out of the segment. You can say, well, they were planning this charade right from the beginning with the whole Roswell thing, right? I mean, you could say that. So to me, that's not a logical way of looking at all that's happened in the last 50 years, especially. And or last 100 years, especially as well. I mean, the last 200, 300 years, it's not been forever. 1700s, I guess, would be foundationally, but all the preceding years as well, there's an evolution to this. It's an evolution of mind that the next level has in their program. They're cultivating spirit. Mind is the actual more accurate way of thinking about it. Because spirit conjures up that's related to the religions. And of course it is, because that's where that terminology came from. So we're programmed with certain ways of thinking of that information. And Tian-Do had the clarity right from the beginning to call it mind. And didn't use the word spirit much. I mean, maybe a few times to illustrate that it was the same, which, the tapes provide the whole classroom. That's the in-depth knowledge of what they were all about. And they wanted people to have that. They put it in the letters. And that's why, those that are choosing to block that from happening, I know I'm not saying that the next level isn't aware of that and allowing that to happen, but it's not their wish that it would happen. But they knew it would, I think. I think it's safe to say that they knew it was likely to happen, or maybe they know for sure that it was going to happen. They can be absolute about things. They've got the overview of everything. But that doesn't mean that they don't have, there are things that they don't have, I believe is safe to say comes from Tian-Do's mind. And so human interface becomes a necessity in order for them to get the more accurate viewpoints. And those that open their minds to their minds by seeking their minds, they pay attention to them, and they give them a little help, encouragement to take a step forward, And there's and that's the forever program. To keep on looking for the next step for yourself. And from them, having them guide us, because the way they do it is gentle. And they have to see you continue to ask periodically, or ask in your behaviors and ways that occur to you that you want to change. and uh, and and so in order to give you the next step in that, so they need to see somebody actually taking. See, it's not like they need it because it's for them. It's not for them. They need it because otherwise you won't continue to grow. If you're just given the help that gets beyond taking steps of just wanting to go in their direction. It doesn't have to actually come into your mind that you're going in their direction. You'll just be glued to the things more and more in their direction until you get to the point of coming to your senses. I'm going to put it that way because that's when your mind, your human mind, and all the influences that you've had upon your human mind, together with the genes and the upbringing of the vehicle, are going to look at it and say, holy smokes, what the heck is this? Is this true? Is this true? Is this true? And that becomes a huge undertaking but it's easy. Just go your way. Keep on seeking and you shall find. Keep on knocking and the doors will be open to you. Keep on asking that highest source that you can reach that certainly is above what humans can do. All this nature, holy smokes. Humans are barely touching the surface on creating these types of beings and variety of beings. They're trying, and they're doing it. I'm sure who knows what they're coming up with in splicing and dicing, with the genes and they're in it. I don't deny any of that. That could be seen as an illusion too. That any of that's real. We can, everything that comes to us, we can look at as, well, is this luring us into something else that we don't want to be a part of? Well, we probably have that built in, antenna, and in a sense, we got red flags. But everything can be used as a red flag too, I think. You can say that, it's a red flag to many people that my classmates, my older member Doe, laid down their vehicles' lives. And that was not an easy willingness to come by at all for anybody of their right mind. I wasn't on my right mind. I was still thinking of this more spiritually. And I proved that. And so, when I say right mind, I'm not saying that I was in the wrong mind. I was just saying I wasn't embracing enough see, I can see the influences saying, what do you mean, Sawyer? Why do you think you were defeated? Why do you think you were you failed? Why do you, and it's because I know I could have made some different choices. And there would have been someone else here to provide the information and to help, keep it alive, on the internet. But that's not, the next level has lots of ways to do that. That's happening. Besides, I could go away tomorrow and they'd still be, the experiment I don't like to say it as an experiment. We're not lab rats to them. But they do grow civilizations of beings. They have the genetic code. It's not an accident that humans came to understand it. Just like the splitting of the atom. Those aren't accidents that happen. I don't know I don't know how many systems develop without something to bring it about. Sure, experience brings it about, right? You organize and you learn how things work and use them and you build cities and everything. So yeah, we have experience with all that. But I'm getting off the track, but I just, we're also building consciousness. And that's why the consciousness movements are all attractive, of course. And to be, the idea of, a mindful action, that's from the next level. T and Do were teaching that in the classroom. You can hear it in the tapes. Paying attention to the sound that and the vibration that your footsteps make on the stairs. Paying attention to how you were closing a door in a cabinet so that you would make no noise. Because they would hear the cabinets all clunking in their quarters when they were in the same house with us. Through the walls. And they said, well, we don't want to put felt pads on there because we want you to learn how to be quiet by your actions being mindful. T and Do were truly sages of the highest degree, literally. They were the yogis above yogis. They were the Buddhas above Buddhas. And that's true. Because T is Do's older member. And yet Do didn't learn that from T. No, Do didn't hear that from T. T didn't say, I'm your older member. No, didn't happen that way. Do fought recognizing T as his older member. He thought he had better ideas. And he wanted to play them out. And T didn't see some of those ideas as being what they were looking for. And then he learned that she was right. After she let it, and at one time T sat down on the stair, I think the curb, I think, is what I think she did. And I don't know if she put her head in her hands or not. I don't know if I amplified that, but that was the impression I had. And said, I'm not taking another step. I don't know where they were going at the time, but they were by foot at that point. And it's because and then Do had a problem with Brother Francis, who T felt like was helping her when she was a nurse in Houston to hit the vein on the person that she was drawing blood from the first time, And so she was asking Brother Francis to help her, and you can go back to the movie Brother Francis of Brother Sun Sister Moon. Was a very interesting movie, depicting Helen as being like the older member. to her son. She took a female vehicle in relationship to the individual that was doing the work, Francis of Assisi, of building a church. I mean, having, sharing his love for nature and everything, and for God, his recognition of God. I mean, not and God. I mean, for God, it was the whole thing that he wanted to honor God in the best way that he felt he could do at that time. You know, he took that step to build that building. I don't know too much. I don't remember too much of the history there, but I watched that movie. I mean, we watched it in the group, and I liked the music of it. It had Donovan in it. Donovan was always an interesting character, I guess. I never met him or anything. But being silly. But let me see, since I've been rambling here, chorus, no, actually they were con artists, criminals, and haven't read half as many books as I or one of my friends have a religious and spiritual texts. They were literally less than average. Ha! That's interesting. What's your evidence of that? Esoteric archives and sacred texts. Those people hadn't read much at all. Oh, really? Okay. All right, well, I'll address that a little bit. So T was a theosopher, and she was she did some I don't know if she did any. No, let's say she did some seance work with the spirit world, and she was I don't know how much history she had in researching the UFO phenomena. I don't know much about that part. But she was well read for all of Madame Blavatsky's work. And she was an astrologer, and so she was into Alan Leo, studied Alan Leo's books for just how to do astrology, you know. But she used her own intuition about things entirely. And people would ask her for to do an astrological chart. And T would not tell them that she wasn't going to do it. Or she would do it or wouldn't do it. But wait for them to bring it up again next time they saw her. And then she waited for a third time for people to bring it up. Because she really didn't want to do people's charts, and she wasn't doing it for money. She worked as a nurse in the preemie baby ward of the Houston hospitals systems. And she met Doe because he was visiting a sick friend, and she was substituting for another nurse at the time to deliver medicine to Doe's friend that he was visiting in the hospital. And they construed that as going to the psychiatric ward or something. When I don't know if there was a psychiatric ward in the same hospital that had babies. Maybe they do have something like that. I don't know. So I don't know what to say to that. But Doe wasn't you know, checking himself into it or any of that baloney. There's been a lot of lies about Tian-Do. You know, so I don't know what this person... Okay, so in terms of reading, she was aware of the polar shifts that were being talked about in the science communities. She was aware of the inside outing of the mindset of people, to where, you know, they become so confident with their own point of view, and they're so willing to put it upon somebody else and, you know, try to snuff out somebody that challenges them, that they it's like they have a guard on their system that says, if you go outside this realm, you're gonna lose all yourself. You're gonna become one of them or something. You know, it's like one of those forms of, you know, like becoming, like for a leftist to become a rightist, you know, in political terms, or a rightist to a leftist. You know, it's a shift in how we think about ourselves, I think, as well as, you know, how we're going to relate to everybody in societies that we circulate within. So it can be, so it's challenging to take on new forms of thought about things instead of referring to the past, the record books. Because we really don't need to refer to the record books in order to talk about how more advanced Tian-Do's minds were. They were talking about genetics in a way that they understood that wasn't taught in the colleges. I know for a fact, because in the colleges they were taught that you can't change your genes. And probably in the 70s and 80s and thereabouts. And yet, that's, you know, people that believe that now know that that was totally wrong. That by repetition we can change our genes is what they were saying in 1980s. Tian-Do were. It's on tape. So they had not advanced knowledge about things that weren't. No, they didn't get it from studying scientific journals. They were getting it from a higher source that is above human. And that's why they didn't want any of us to be in the classroom. They didn't need us to. They were going to go around the country talking about it. And that's all they felt like they were going to do. And then all of a sudden, people at this private meeting of meditation groups in North Hollywood got a letter to the leader of it, and he said something to some of the group that were like his students. He said, do you want to go over there to where they were at in Ojai and meet with them and, you know, and see what this is all about? And so they sent Sunodi, I think, and I forget who the other person was. And they went back with and statement one is what they received in the mail from the meditation group. And so when they came back, they said, they reported back and they decided to invite them to come speak to their group. And that became a two-night event at this house because of how many people came to it. You know, not thousands, but hundreds, maybe a couple hundred, I guess. I don't know if that's how many that came out actually. But no, maybe it wasn't that much. But from that meeting, I think about a dozen, I don't know if it was exactly a dozen, individuals told Tiendo that they wanted to follow them. They wanted to go with them. They wanted to learn from them. And Tiendo then said, this is like sitting around a campfire after Tiendo gave those meetings. Or might have been at those meetings, maybe the second meeting. What they did, I think, is they invited those individuals that wanted to have more information or talk more up to the campground, I think. I don't know if it was where they were staying, because they would have been protective of that. But wherever it was, I think, a campground, is the way I remember it. And from that, I guess, yeah, the way they told it, that there were people coming and going from it. And that, but there was a core group of Norodi and Dansodi and Kododi and Kododi and Dansodi weren't among the individuals that left in 1997. They had dropped out before that, and they later died, lost their vehicles. But let me think a second here. Well, anyway, I know I kept on going down the road there with more details about that, but so they didn't. So when those students, they weren't students then. They became students, and so they asked them, "How should we identify you? What shall we call you? You know, what names do you go by?" And they said, "Well, I guess you can call us Bo and Peep, because now we have sheep." And before that, whenever they were identifying themselves, it would be like he and she, or guinea and pig. But notice that it was he and she, I think, because T was birthing him to the throne. Revelation 12. The woman births the son to the throne, her son. And the throne task is what I think it was saying in Daniel, that I was watching which I don't want to be critical of, and well, never mind that. Let me go back to the no, actually, I'll say they were con. And they didn't con anybody, so that's stupid. You don't know anything about their history. You just believe whatever you're told, it sounds like. I can understand you being, thinking that way. I can understand you thinking that way. But, it doesn't get you anywhere. It's not going to get you anywhere. Except, there's... Before I think somebody would call somebody a con artist, who are the greatest con artists in the world? I would say. Who evidenced being the greatest con artist in the world? Whether they know it or not. Well, I say it's a lot of the religious and spiritual leaders, and it's a lot of the leaders in the politics, and it's a lot of the leaders in the science community, and it's a lot of the leaders in the university communities that are tied in with the science community. They're training people to go in these directions. You know what I mean? Take apart the human genome. Try to put new vehicles together. Try to repair old vehicles. Try to restore eternal life to the human kingdom that they think is a restoration. They don't know. They don't know that. They don't know a lot of things. I mean, most of everything I just said, they don't know consciously what's going on. They have a very limited. We have a very limited knowledge. I'm not talking about me as above them. I'm not talking about it that way. It's just our perception of what's real is very limited. But then at the same time, it's very elevated. But it's up to us to decide how far up we want to go. Do we want to go to the top, the totem pole? Then we have to go off the earth to get there with our minds. Because minds generate frequencies that can be measured if somebody knows how to identify that band of frequency. And scientists know that there's different bands of frequencies that they have not been able to identify in the past that they can now identify. We have the evidence that there's a continuous possibility of bands of communication. So that we are time-shared computer systems with the heart and the soul. Not with the heart and the soul, we are souls. Might as well think of it that way because that's the only thing that can grow. And the spirit that we put into that soul is the mind we accept, is the choices we make, and the positives and negatives that we experience from those choices, and how we try to accept the things that aren't good about us or are causing disease in mind and body. If you have a thought that says you're not going to amount to anything, if you're told that as a child, that's a scar you're putting on that child, but that doesn't mean the child can't overcome it. And the next level has ways of helping everybody at every level advance a little bit. And advancement is natural, and it's also natural to advance a little bit and then back up a little bit, advance a little bit, back up a little bit, advance a little more maybe, keep a little more maybe before you back up a little bit. It's not like it's a waveform that we're producing. Of mind. Our minds are always going. They're always adding. I mean, even when we're sleeping, sometimes we're dreaming. And the next level has relationships with our dreams when they want to. For those that have been asking. But the dreams can also be interpreted in ways that aren't meant to be interpreted, because although it comes with it, though, that we can make it about ourselves being elevated because of a dream, as opposed to being elevated by the dream itself. The information, the feeling that comes with identifying what the next level would do in producing a dream. There wouldn't be any horror in it. There wouldn't be any ugliness to it. There wouldn't be any... I'm not saying that I shouldn't try to limit it too much, but the feeling you would get of dealing with it could be scary. I'm just relating to what I feel like this vehicle might have been tagged at the time when I was in my early teens, yeah. Yeah, when I have dreams that I was expanding I was laying on the pillow and I knew I was on the pillow. But when I closed my eyes, it's like my mind pictured myself on the pillow and that the pillow would grow. Or maybe I would open my eyes a little bit and see the pillow, and it was huge. It was like, I couldn't imagine how big it was. It wasn't like, it just was. And then my fingers were feeling it that way too, on the pillow. And it was frightening. It was frightening to me. And I'd be screaming about it. And then it would, that would last for, I don't know, seconds probably. Maybe 20 seconds, I don't know, 10 seconds, 15. I don't know, maybe that much as I was laying in bed. But, and then I would have this sense of everything, as opposed to one focused spot on the pillow. However big I thought that spot was in relationship to reality. And that would happen repeatedly in a night. But not crazy. But I don't remember now if I would scream it out. Or go to my parents' bed, and say, crying, and he would say, "What? Go to bed, shut up." I don't know what they said, really. They weren't cruel to me about it. I think they let me sleep at the bottom of their bed one time when I was probably 10 or 11 or 12. Anyway, so I gave you a little detailed view of that, and I told it very slowly. I know I could get with it better. I'm trying to remember it as I go, I'm old, so I have a right to be slow. Yeah, esoteric archives. Yeah, okay. you know, maybe I will. Maybe I will. I'm going to go down to Joseph Coates. Not sure where I heard this. I think it was a documentary. I could be wrong, but I recall hearing one of the class members had a gun in their backpack, just in case, or in a safe away from the house. I'd like to know where you heard that. I mean, there was in a documentary in the Heaven's Gate. They had rifles in storage. I don't know if they had more than one, but I believe they had. It might have been two, and there might have been some magazines. There were. It's actually I have the inventory of them. The rifles they had. They learned. They had Starody, at least. Well, maybe not. At least maybe one other person. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if there was two people that were doing target practice while they were building the Earth ship out of concrete tires. I mean, putting concrete into mud into tires, and then stacking them in a pattern that was called an Earthship design. You know, that somebody founded that idea of doing that, and so they built quite a few walls and things while they were doing that. At the same time, this was on some land that they bought, and then they sold soon after that. But so let's see. So why did I get into that part? Let me go back to the question there. Oh, about the guns. Yeah, so I feel like I want to give you more perspective of how they thought about the guns. And they're not against people having guns, but not to kill humans with. But that doesn't mean that there's not a value to having a gun and those living around you knowing that you have a gun. If you're out in the bush somewhere and you don't want people to bother you. You know, you can look at it that way. I'm not saying that they had the guns for that reason, because they had other. They at one point were, after the Waco experience, his response to that was that Koresh was way off track from behaviors and ways that the next level would approve of, I think is safe to say. But those that believed in him and were even willing to lose their life, basically, because of him, he felt like those would be minds that were associated with those vehicles that the next level would bring back for another experience in the human kingdom, what they call reincarnation. That could happen right away, that the next level could do that. But because he thought that they were, because members of the next level aren't, they don't think about their vehicles as their identity as much. So they're in a fabricated identity, potentially, from some point of view, right? Which all our identities are fabricated, I believe. So it's just choosing which one you're fabricating it with, I guess. But because of the way that the interface happens with the discarnate world and human vehicles and the space alien minds that are souls that have hybridized dense physical human equivalent vehicles, because they're trying to raise them to be reproductive, but they probably really kill the reproductive system with all their crossbreeding and stuff, breeding within themselves, and however they've been doing it on their spacecrafts inside, whether they're inside the planet or orbiting around it, or who knows how long their spacecrafts are able to orbit the planet and be invisible to human detection. We don't know how many could be up there. Doe talked about thousands. He didn't say that what he said in the Beyond Human tapes was that you could see that they would. He didn't just say thousands. He said that you would see them. You might see them coming in shifts. I don't know if he used the word might. I think it was a might. But he gave more information than just saying things like that. So he was, a receiver, a live wire for T's mind that he was pulling in to that vehicle. He was choosing to tap into that frequency. It's actually tapping into a frequency of mind. It's got literalness to it. It's science. It's strictly science. But science isn't without heart, the way that science is in the human kingdom, to where, they can use humans as, their guinea pigs and their warriors and their all the things that are done in the human kingdom, so that the ones that are calling the shots the most, that don't have to worry about where their next meal's coming from, and a lot of other things, a ton of other things, that, while we have to work to scrape to the bone to just make ends meet, which is part of the norm that we've experienced and we've grown up with. And so it's good, though. It's good to be working without any credit and stuff. I'm just thinking about myself and Kathy, because we have very little credit. And we get down to $100, or $200. I don't know. It's the smallest we got down to. But, every month is another one to keep up with. So anyway, but it's not bad to get into that, to be living like that, because if you are trying to be good and help other people, and in whatever ways that we can, that's goodness. That's the way we express goodness to one another. It was given to us as the second greatest commandment, because that's when an older member isn't actually on the ground with us in the flesh, and we're a part of their, in the old terminology, a disciple of theirs, a student. That's all that meant, was that they were a student. That's in the more realistic way of thinking about it, instead of discipleship, which has all the spiritual connotations of being something elevated, made into saints, made into, all kinds of people identifying with themselves as with that old information, the record books, and making them holy, to where millions of people are giving them money to even have corporations and have world outreach, and a lot of times doing some good things, I'm sure, to those that, support their interests. So that entity, I don't know what they've got their hands in. Because they also have that pedophilia kind of stuff going on. It is totally corrupt. To see that image of Trump, like, dressed up with a robe and stuff, and next to the Pope, I mean, hey, Jesus said you were going to see false Christs. That's false people that say they're anointed by God. It's just not the right God. It's the wrong one. And Daniel talked about that. And, I just watched, someone bringing up Daniel. Which I appreciated getting because of, I should say what that was. Was it 23? Since I brought that up, let me go there. Daniel 11, I think it was 23, was it? Sorry, I'm in the wrong place here. I don't even want to be in this spot on the Daniel thing. Yeah, I don't want to go there now. Let me go back to the chat. I'm sorry, but I didn't finish talking about guns. Which I repeat, we're not to kill anybody with. whether they had advantages like in being defensive by having the appearance of, but they also, though at one point, so he first brought up the idea of getting a gun while I was still in the classroom, so I'm a witness to it, the meeting, where the way I remember it was that he wondered if that was what happened at Waco was like an indication of the way that we might exit by the hands of the government, getting a hold of the idea of these people that have this wacky belief, leaving everything behind and getting on a UFO, if they, be outlawed or something, or they get something, you're too weird and they want to get rid of you because you challenge certain things that they don't want people to think about. Like with T and O, if you're talking about UFOs, that's still not, I don't know how much that's talked about in the, among people these days. Probably some circles, probably a lot. And, I don't keep up with it, but it's a hard subject to wrap your head around, I guess to see as real, having reality to it. Yeah, I guess, I'm programmed, I guess, in that regard. So to me, it's got some reality. And I was given a sighting, but I never depended on it. It was after I joined the group. I was separated from the group with my partner, and we were hitchhiking down towards Texas. And we got to Corpus Christi, and we put our sleeping bags on the beach, and she didn't see it, but I saw it. But there was a bright light that went shooting by us, going like from north to south over the Gulf of Mexico, and then it did a right angle turn suddenly, so that it would, if it was going to continue, it would have been going into the Gulf of Mexico, but it did not. Before it got to that close to it, not really that close to it at all, really. It was up high. But I'm just telling to give you that for the direction of it. It did another right angle turn. So if I was going to measure it, like in my eye, the length of space, this is stupid, but I was thinking of it as like 2 inches. Maybe more than that. Maybe more than that. Yeah, more than that. I mean, this is stupid the way I'm thinking about it. It's inches. Oh boy! And then I'm trying to measure what my eye remember seeing. It was pronounced, in other words. It wasn't like a quick Z in the sky, a Z, like a Canadian Z. I think they draw it with straight angles, don't they? But, so I don't know if that, I have this scar on my lips, that's sometimes an indication. I wondered if I had missing time. I'm getting hungry already. But I'm not hungry for the right stuff. So, Atlas. Well, I didn't finish with the... So we didn't get guns at the time, no. When I talked about it after the Waco event. And so it was after I left the classroom that they were building the Earthship, and they got guns, and they and then they talked about, they wrote a document that while after I had left, you know what? I gotta get something else. Well, Joseph, I think, yeah, I don't, I don't really, you can't believe what you hear. You can't believe everything you hear, of course. So I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, to check on it, and I know, I don't know. Let's just go from there. Yeah, yeah, never mind. Oh, you feel like you heard it in the cult next door. I didn't see that yet. Sorry. With Diane Sawyer. Huh. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they made stuff up. Or had somebody, guessing or something. Or I don't know what. But I mean, the way it was talked about in terms of, was in the Heaven's Gate podcast. If you want to go look at that. Which was on, whatchamacallit. It was on iTunes for a while. Heaven's Gate podcast. And Stitcher, I think. Stitcher had it. And you'll see one of the later episodes, there's like 10 episodes of it. And in one of the later ones, I think Ben Zeller talks about it. Which was referring to, I think, the same idea that Doe was thinking about, that for anybody that even after they were gone was well, I'm not going to go any further with that. Anyway, so in the news lately, says Joseph Coates, there's talk about how 12 or so scientists, UFO experts, have either died or gone missing. They're starting to look into it now. Yes, I've heard some of that talked about. I wouldn't be surprised. No, I don't think so. I think, if people step out of line in some way, shape, or form, or they know too much about something that somebody else fears that they're gonna, squeak on or whatever, then I wouldn't be surprised if they take them out. Or it could also be employing them to work in their underground facilities, to work on having more, dealing with more baby organs and things like that. Trying to grow organs, and they just need more people to do some of the legwork also. Maybe they're actually just capturing people. Gone missing or died. So let me go over to the title of this by now, finally. Oh, I didn't go to the top, my screen. So, what's on my screen now will be, I'm going to read it, that it's a report from, mostly from Abby Loeb that I saw on Facebook today. And I wasn't able to listen to it. They're very long. They probably do that on purpose, and they put things in it that you want to hear, because they give you more and more details, it seems like, the more they talk about this. And so anyway, so I'm going to read what the report, my summary of it, that on January 22nd, let me make sure that everything's going okay. Okay. That on January 22nd, 2026, and my dates aren't going to go in any kind of an order. It's just the way that I heard it, and different. It's kind of crazy. So this is kind of my notes, really. This is what all this is. So on January 22nd, 2026, at 1437 UTC, 3i Atlas was in opposition with the Sun and the Earth at a 0.69 degrees. Now, I'm adding that an opposition in astrology or astronomy, because a lot of times they're connected, is considered to be from 1 to 8 degrees, because I did some astrology in the group and after the group a little bit. But so, okay, so Atlas, it was in opposition. I remember that. I remember when that was the case. And so what they're saying, so what was significant about this was that Atlas has an antitail. All the comets generally have an antitail, which extends out like as is going like towards the sun. So it's like always pointed towards the sun, actually, in its direction with the antitail, even though it might be traveling in its motion different than the way, it looks like it's in front of the comet. Like protruded out from the front of it. And so that tail, they're saying that at that time it stopped pointing to the sun and blew their minds. I don't know if it took like 6 minutes for it to do that or 23 minutes. I don't remember how long it took when it stopped pointing to the sun, and I said blew their minds. So its antitail was a narrow jet of material, they said, pointing to the sun, and defied physics by aiming directly at Earth instead. In other words, it changed what it was aiming at. So now this antitail was aiming directly at the Earth. And that antitail was measured to be the distance between the Earth and the Sun. The size of it. Because what it looks like in the sky is like a long streak of light, that's constant. It doesn't just go by like a fireball does. Which I've seen all kinds of things living outdoors with the, with the group when we were living in Wyoming and northern Colorado. The wilderness in Revelation 12 that T took us to. So between January 18th to the 25th, they said that the Earth sat in Atlas's crosshairs, as they called it, by a structure they call Atlas, that they said was 380,000 kilometers away in space from Earth. They said the jet was visible since the 21st, when the Hubble maybe I didn't write that down right. The jet was visible since the 21st, when Hubble saw it, when Atlas was 2.98 AU from Earth. The jet was visible. The jet of Atlas. Because it put out this bubble around the Earth. That's more recent, I think, that it did that. And then on February 8th, 17 days after the opposition, Hubble watched the antitail beam rotate away from the Earth as Atlas went off into deep space again at about 68.2 kilometers per second. So on December 13th, some location observatory in Thailand, I wrote it as Terazak, which that's not probably right, observatory in Thailand, saw a prominent antitail point to the sun. They were documenting when the antitail was pointed to the sun. And that was 51 days after Atlas's perihelion to the sun. The closest point to the sun is the perihelion. So in all other comets, after perihelion, the comet's coma shrink, and its jets fade, and the antitail disappeared. So with Atlas, the antitail remained visible for months and was sharp, and its direction was stable. Back towards the sun again, I guess. Then on January 7th, the Hubble pictured Atlas to have a triple tail, while its length was as long as Earth to Moon in distance. Triple was interesting to me for me to hear, because at one point Hale-Bopp had a triple tail, never having been reported before that I ever heard of. And Hale-Bopp can be seen with two trailing tails and one antitail pointing to the sun. But that was after Hale-Bopp came out from behind the sun. Before then, it didn't have a triple tail, but that's when the so-called companion object was visible by Hawaii and the Japanese. And then on April 2nd, 2026, that's getting up to close to date, the Deep Space Network logged that they determined was a deliberate localized high energy wave that to deflect high energy waves away from the Earth. In other words, they determined that Atlas created a deliberate localized, I didn't say that right. Let me fix that. That Atlas deliberately sent a localized high-energy wave to deflect high-energy waves away from the Earth. And that Atlas put a magnetic bubble around the Earth. And they said that comets don't have dynamic capability of projecting a flux of magnetic field lines. But at 1842 UTC, on that day on April 2nd, European Space Agency's magnetic spectrometer on the International Space Station, ISS, recorded a sudden, inexplicable drop, like a literal shadow on the Earth that lasted for 23 seconds exactly. Also, it's being reported on August 14th, 2025, near to when Atlas was first discovered in July, as I understand it. I'm saying that. Atlas, unlike the other interstellar objects, demonstrated having what they said was a hyperbolic excess velocity speed. Hyperbolic excess velocity speed that was strangely low, like 21.4 kilometers per second. That through spectrographic analysis revealed its surface was made of highly reflective unknown isotopes. Highly reflective unknown isotopes. They compared to being a highly polished chrome sphere. That they can't figure out how a solid object with that mass could have such a pristine surface, while traveling through space at that speed would deteriorate. And that the Webb Space Telescope and JWT, I don't know who that is, I don't remember, both confirmed that Atlas put out a massive cone over the Earth. a cone of frequencies. But also, I guess, opened up the view to see what they are, maybe. That's one way I just thought about thinking about it. Where they're giving people a dose of their reality. Okay, I just typed in something and I just get this thought, which I'm not saying is from Tiendo's mind, but I wondered if putting a massive cone over the Earth, like on a frequency basis, I wonder if Tiendo and crew were giving the entire Earth a dose of their reality that can both assist and respond to in various ways to what's happening, to include greater questions for the greatest quests, not questions, greater, I mean, that's the same thing, quests for the greatest truths we can find. And I suggest looking at Tiendo's information. Okay, I'll leave it there. Alright, I'll go back to the chat and then maybe I'll end the stream. So yeah, so that's my source of that. That idea of Atlas being a spacecraft. If I had to gamble, if I had to gamble on my life, I would say that it is. I'm not saying it's a spacecraft, but it's all done by the next level above human that I'm talking about as T and Do and crew. Actually, literally on the spacecrafts. That can be as big as a planet, as I understand it, and makes sense to me. Makes sense to me just makes sense to me that it's true. So, I know that puts me into somewhat of a lunatic, especially if I don't tie it together with religiosity in any big way besides looking at the things that Jesus said, mostly. But, so if there isn't anything more, let me just double check if I went through everything I wanted to. Yeah, I did, I think. So, good night, folks.